Welcome to Proclaiming Justice, a podcast from PJTN that focuses the light of truth on vital issues in today's headlines that impact every American. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore, founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and I'm here to educate, motivate, and activate you to action. I want to arm you with the truth and the facts you'll need to fight and preserve our constitutional republic and uphold the Judeo-Christian values our nation was founded upon. Welcome to Proclaiming Justice, a PJTN podcast where we shine the light of biblical truth on vital issues from today's headlines that impact every American, Jewish or Christian, people of faith and people of conscience. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore. If you missed the last episode of this podcast, you will find it and our previous podcast lineup on our website at pjtn.org, as well as all the other platforms that you use to access your favorite podcasts. On this week's podcast, I have invited Robert Arnakis with the Leadership Institute to talk about our upcoming Taking Back America's Children Summit, January 29th in Franklin, Tennessee. The goal of the summit is to educate and activate parents and citizens to flip their school boards. Robert is the Senior Director of Domestic and International Programs to the Leadership Institute. He oversees divisions which provide political education and consultation to senior government officials, public policy leaders, and influencers. His background includes serving as senior staff to multiple presidential and congressional campaigns. Additionally, Robert has consulting experience with multiple grassroots-driven organizations. Robert has provided assistance to NGOs, international political leadership, and senior government leaders from nearly 36 countries. Most recently, Robert worked with the Prime Minister of Jamaica. Raised in Lake Tahoe, California, what a place to be raised, Robert attended Biola University, where he majored in sociology and political science. Robert is married and resides in Springfield, Virginia. Robert, welcome to PJTN's Proclaiming Justice podcast.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Really appreciate it. And thanks for reaching out to me today.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lake Tahoe, I've spent many a winter season on the slopes skiing. So what a place to have grown up.
It was amazing. I wish I still had family out there. I was just there a couple of years ago, and I was thinking to myself, man, I need to get back out there. It's winter time. The mountains are calling.
Gotta hit the slopes. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, listen, great to have you on the program, and great to have your involvement in our upcoming Taking Back America's Children Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert, as I just introduced you to, he is an amazing individual with incredible insight, and I felt it was important to have him on the show prior to our upcoming summit to give all of you an idea as to what you can expect at our upcoming event. Now, Robert, the timing of this summit, and of course the timing of this interview, is incredible, actually, because with everything going on right now in Washington, D.C., everybody is watching what is happening. There's a lot of confusion going on, but I wanted to just point out what I see, which is so important for us. And Robert, I'm hoping that you can explain this to our audience, is for them to connect the dots to help us out here in the United States, the flyover states, to understand what is really going on and how does what we're watching unfold in Washington, D.C., how is it affecting even the very local elected positions like the school board races? In our audience at Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, our focus is on those school boards because those school board leaders, they represent and they have access to the future of our republic through our children and through their education. So, Robert, can you explain to us in layman's terms for our audience to understand what is going on, what is at stake in Washington, D.C. from your perspective in grooming and preparing leaders for these incredible positions? The experience that you have is just amazing. But how is that related, what we're watching in D.C., how is it related to the very local politics like our school board?
Well, when we were talking earlier, Lori, one of the things that struck me is one word: transparency.
Mm,
Right? What you are seeing in the cities and in the counties and the local school boards is the exact same problem that you're seeing in Washington, D.C., and it's a lack of transparency.
mhm,
Uh, in a time when we have access to amazing tools and technology, you would think that things would become more transparent. But unfortunately, that's not been the case. And so, what you're seeing in the speakership right now is a battle for power, right? And
mhm,
it's a reached a point where people are very frustrated because they feel that their voices are not being heard. They feel that their constituent voices are not being heard, and they're being presented with things from a Republican side. They're saying, "Hey, you're just going to have to deal with this. You're just going to have
mhm,
to accept this, right?" And this is really a function of the the factions becoming so polarized, number one, but
right.
number two, the minority and majority numbers being so few that one voice really does make a difference. And so every one of these members, whether it be on the Senate side or the House side, has enormous control,
Mhm,
or potential control, I should say. And so when you see these people fighting, um, it is because they feel that their voice is not being heard and it's not being done in a transparent manner. And
mhm,
so they have to come back to their constituents and argue that, hey, here's what we're doing, here's how we're fighting for you. And the constituents say, hey, Republican or Democrat, you guys have control. Why is my life not getting better? Right.
mhm,
And so it is a battle over power right now. And you have people like the Freedom Caucus, and there are a lot of good members like Jim Jordan, who are a member of Freedom Caucus and very closely aligned with LI out
mhm.
there. And they're trying to say, we're trying to do the right thing here. And unfortunately, what I think is in order to get things accomplished more and more in this spirit of bipartisanship, what happens is a lot of their base is getting ignored.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, we see it happen time and again. Every elected election cycle, we go, we listen to the debates, we choose our candidates, and those of us who are conservative and standing on principles, we think we're electing these principled individuals. And then they get to Washington or they go to the state legislature and they start voting and we're looking at ourselves saying, wait a minute, what did I miss? How did this happen? And the transparency is whittled away, and it's frustrating, and people are fed up. And I think what we're seeing with these 20 who are standing their ground, they're hearing us. So are the rest of the members of Congress are hearing us as well, but they aren't willing to take the bold stand that is being taken by these individuals. And I say, God bless them. And the other thing that I find interesting about this is that the more this debate continues, the more transparency is happening. It's forcing them to expose. Several of the members of Congress have admitted, let's talk about these issues behind closed doors. No, that's the problem. It's just like what you said, it's about transparency. So, Robert, let's talk about the transparency of the school board. Now, you know that that's our focus, and we know we have 14,000 school boards, school districts across this country. We've got a lot of work to do, and at PJTN, we've been fighting this battle for over a decade now, trying to go into communities, county by county, state by state, to educate and activate parents and citizens to run for school board, flip their school boards, and take back local control of our communities, not allow Washington and the federal Department of Education to dictate on the local level or even on the state level for that matter what we should be teaching our children. But like, for example, in Tennessee, we need to teach Tennessee children using our values, not using the federal Department of Education's values and its propaganda. So let's talk about the local leadership role and what Leadership Institute is going to bring to this summit. Why is it important that Leadership Institute be involved in this program?
So I've been with the Leadership Institute for nearly 2 decades, uh, which is a lifetime in politics, let alone a lifetime at any one organization. But one of the things that I remember early on was seeing a quote from Edmund Burke. And the quote I'm sure you've heard before is that all that is necessary for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. And I would add
Yes.
good women.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
and that has been the reality of what we've been facing with our school boards.
Mhm.
Uh, I myself am not a parent, but certainly we have lots of good friends, family who are parents. And one of the things that I have seen is that as parents have got busier and busier, and as we've come to a point where pretty much for a family to survive these days, you have to have a dual income,
Right.
um, things get left on the side. And things that were commonplace when we were younger, such as our parents being active in things like PTAs, are no longer common. And
Hmm.
so, speaking from my experience, having been involved in politics for over 2 decades, when I go around and I work with candidates and I work with activists, one of the things that I continually see is that on the conservative side, we have always wanted to run our folks for Congress and state house and these higher positions, right? Or
Hmm.
we got involved in these activism um,
Hmm.
causes that are very noble, but again, are large. And often that's at the stake of us getting involved on a local level. I myself and my team are going out there week after week training candidates. And I'll tell you that I have seen firsthand the number of people who run for school boards. We will have 20 candidates running for everything else, and maybe one candidate who runs for school board.
Right.
And there's a reason, because it hasn't been sexy, it hasn't been interesting to our folks. We've been trying to operate on a higher level, and we've been a bit naive as to what's been going on in our school boards. Right? I live just a few miles from Loudoun County. Loudoun County was in many ways the epicenter of the school board fight that took place nationwide. And it
Hmm.
opened the eyes and ears of a lot of conservative parents. And Loudoun County is a conservative county, but it opened their eyes as to what was going on in their own backyards. And I
Hmm.
think that's the case that we're finding out for a lot of communities across America, conservative states and liberal states, that you see these parents who have given just a little bit too much trust in the school system, a little
Right.
too much trust in their legislators, and we're reaping the fruits of that unfortunately that lack of involvement. And
Hmm.
so when I go around, and thankfully we've been doing this for a couple of years now, but we're really excited to see organizations like yourself that have been in the fight for a long time, because we can come in there with our political activism and our political training and our decades of that and say, okay, you want to get involved on a local level, here's
Hmm.
what it takes to do it, right?
Hmm. Right.
And I
Hmm.
want just to add one other thing to that. If we contrast that to where we've been at as conservatives versus where the liberals have been, the liberals have for decades used the institutions, particularly the school board institutions, as a as an incubator, if you will, to propel people into further political careers. I've seen it myself where a member of Congress has started out as a school board member, will move to city council, will then move to a state house or a county position, and then will move into Congress. And
Hmm.
automatically, right out of the gate, running for Congress, right? They build
Right.
up political acumen and their experience at the school board level. And that's what we have to understand and realize.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You brought up an interesting point at the beginning of your statement where you said you're not a parent, but the school board races are not just for parents. And talk a little bit about the citizens, because you may not have, and our audience may not have children or grandchildren in the school system, but we are taxpayers. And every generation, and you probably remember this, Robert, that every generation is required in the United States is required to educate or hand over the baton of our constitutional republic to the next generation. We do that through education. So it's not just if you have a child in the system or a grandchild in the system. If you are paying taxes, you have a vested interest in your community by making sure the children in your community are properly educated, are taught about the Constitution, are taught about our founding. You know, one of the things that we have lost sight of is the faith that the founders had and why they came to the United States, why their form of government. You know, there's great books written about this, about the Hebraic foundation of our nation and how the early founding fathers were raised, or they cut their teeth on Christian Hebraists who saw the Bible or the Israel Commonwealth as an example to try to emulate in the United States of America. And that's why we have the founding documents. That's why the founders drafted those founding documents the way they did. It's why they spoke about Almighty God, about our liberties coming from God himself. Robert, would you elaborate on that and talk about the importance of us communicating that, the real history, the true history of our founding to the next generation, whether you're a parent, grandparent, or a tax-paying citizen?
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. When I was a child, history was one of the subjects I excelled in. Math, not so much. But one of the things I found fascinating, and there's a quote out there again that says that if we don't understand history, we're bound to repeat it. Mm-hmm. And I think that is very much the case. I was actually just in Israel and Jordan a few weeks ago, and I found it fascinating to just we're relatively new country, but you go to these countries who have been around forever, who have a deep and rich understanding of why their country is great. We sometimes take that for granted. I think in the rush of our day-to-day lives, we don't spend a lot of time going back into understanding history. Right. And if you look at that, right, our history, if we are not understanding our history, particularly from a political standpoint, then we are setting ourselves up for failure. Mm-hmm. And when you look at things like school boards, and when you look at the lack of involvement with parents and with folks that are tax-paying citizens, right? If you are not involved, then you are part of the problem, not part of the solution. Mm-hmm. And so when we're talking about school boards, one of the things that we talk about in our workshops is if you're going to impact school boards, you need to first understand what school boards do, right? What is their function? How do they operate, right? And many of our folks are business owners, and they understand what it takes to be a successful business owner. You don't just jump right into stuff. So you need to understand the fundamentals and like things like budgeting and accountability, right? If you are a tax-paying citizen, we should know why we pay our taxes and what they go for. And so a lot of that is education. A great example of this I just saw in Clark County, Nevada, which is one of the largest school board systems in the country and one of the most controversial. They just decided they were going to go and buy all these green EV buses. Right? And that's wonderful, right? You want to, protect the environment, but they're doing it on the backs of the students. They're doing it on the backs of the teachers. And so understanding what the budget is and how that budget decision is decided is super important, right? Mm-hmm. And being able to, things like we talked about this in our activism program, being able to articulate positions in a not anger-driven way, but in a kind and articulate way at a school board meeting is super important. So we not only have to understand the processes, but we have to be better messengers on our side.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We are able to have rational and sane and logical discussions, which is hard sometimes, I admit.
Yeah. Yes, parents, and we saw that over the last couple of years, are very impassioned and they're fed up. They're frustrated, and we can understand their frustration, because parents did not send their schools to go send their kids to the public school down the street to get, indoctrinated with propaganda or be introduced to pornography and suicidal tendencies or thoughts. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to just reiterate how critically important this upcoming summit is. You're hearing from Robert. Robert is going to be one of the main speakers. He's going to be hosting a training at this summit. It's extremely important for you to be there. And it's not expensive. It's only $25 a person. It's going to be a full day summit, January 29th in Franklin, Tennessee. And just for a little history lesson, ladies and gentlemen, Franklin, Tennessee, Williamson County is ground zero for the textbook battle. A decade ago, that's where we found the anti-Semitic textbook that eventually exposed all the propaganda that we are witnessing now today. It happened right here. So we're bringing it back to Williamson County. This is the county that we flipped the school board. There were 6 sitting school boards members that were up for re-election back in 2014, and we flipped every one of them. We removed all 6. We had 4 months to be able to do that after they voted to keep that textbook that the community told them at a school board meeting, get rid of it. And they voted against the parents and the citizens. And we went to work. 4 months later, that school board had a whole new school board representing we the people. So this is why this is important. Whether you have a child in the school system or not, you pay the taxes. It's important for you to be there. Robert, our time is coming to a close. I want to just ask you, are there any final comments you would like to share with our audience before we end this conversation?
Well, I want to encourage everyone to attend the conference. I think it is a tremendous opportunity. At this point, we don't know if we're going to be back in Tennessee, let alone Nashville, Franklin County. And so I would encourage you, definitely come and enjoy this opportunity. If you're not able to attend it in person, we do have school board trainings online at leadershipinstitute.org, and you can take advantage of that. But certainly, I would encourage you, come to attend the program, come to attend the training, come to attend the network opportunities. It is guaranteed to be a tremendous time and a crucial time as we enter the 2024 election cycle. We will have a lot of voters coming out to vote, and we need people supporting candidates and elected officials from the top to the bottom and the bottom to the top. So hopefully I'll meet you in person here in a few weeks. And Lori, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Robert, thank you so much for taking the time. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've been encouraged and inspired to join us at the Taking Back America's Children Summit on January 29th in Franklin, Tennessee. You can get more information and register for this important event by visiting our website at pjtn.org. The future of our republic hangs in the balance, and it's up to us, we the people, to take back local control of our children's education. Whether you have children in the school system or you are a tax-paying citizen, you have an obligation to ensure we train up the next generation to lead future generations to uphold and defend this republic that hundreds of thousands have died to defend. I hope you enjoyed this program. We will post this podcast on our website and all of our podcast platforms so that you can share with your family and friends. Again, as PJTN Watchmen, we have a biblical mandate to stand against the ungodly rising Marxist threat that is destroying this nation and other Western nations, threatening our Judeo-Christian values and promoting antisemitism. I also want to remind you that as a watchman, it's important for you to listen and share this and all of our previous podcasts with your family and friends so that they can become more informed about this and other related issues that threaten our republic and the state of Israel. So please remember to like and share. We cannot remain silent. God warned the prophet Ezekiel about the responsibility of the watchman, and his duty is to sound the alarm. And you can sound the alarm too, because he told the watchman, if you do not sound the alarm and any innocent blood is shed, it will be required of you. God will hold us accountable. So I'm encouraging you, ladies and gentlemen, you need to sound the alarm and warn others just by simply sharing this podcast with your family and friends. So please share, like this podcast, help sound the alarm. And again, Dietrich Bonhoeffer reminded us, silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. Don't forget to join us for next week's podcast as we continue this conversation about combating the rise of anti-Semitism and taking back local control of our communities and our children's education. I want to also remind you that if you have not signed up to become a Watchman, you can help support this mission through our award-winning documentaries and Focus on Israel programs, as well as more programs like this for just $20 a month. So go to our website at pjtn.org to watch our programs and listen to our past podcasts. With your generous monthly donation, you can ensure that PJTN remains on the front lines and in the headlines, but we can't do it without your faithful prayers and financial support. I hope that you will prayerfully consider supporting our mission as we educate to activate Jews, Christians, and all people of conscience to stand on the front lines of this all-encompassing war. God bless you, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren, the State of Israel, and these United States. Thank you again for joining me on this edition of Proclaiming Justice. Please share this podcast with your family and friends. For more information about how you can get involved, please visit our website at pjtn.org. As a PJTN Watchman, you can help us keep up the fight to preserve our freedom for our children and their children for such a time as this.